The oldest sport in America is now its fastest growing.
Lacrosse is fun to play. It's got the hitting of football, the skill of hockey, it's got scoring of basketball.
I think just the up and down tempo, scoring goals, making plays in transition, I think that's the best part of the game.
It's a fast-paced, high-scoring game.
Youth participation has nearly tripled since 2001.
You get a feel for the game. You actually get connected with the game. You enjoy playing it just because of how much you relate to everything on the field.
It doesn't really matter your size or weight, and if you put the time in, you can play this game, and that's why so many kids are starting to pick it up now and getting a chance to play in college and professionally.
With lacrosse, you can make it work in so many different ways. Like, I'm not the fastest player on the field, but I have good stick skills to compensate for it. And if the fastest girl on the field might not need the best stick skills because she can just run by everyone.
Being from Native American descent, it means a little bit more. I would say, it's in our blood. It's just, it's in you.
Lacrosse was being played in central New York and southern Ontario centuries before any explorers arrived from Europe. The region is the cradle of lacrosse. To the indigenous peoples, the sport was a gift from the Creator. A game played to bring people together, to resolve conflicts, or as a healing game, powerful medicine to treat the sick.
It has multiple features within it that are medicine, so it uplifts your spirits and brings good thoughts and positive thoughts and goodwill to the community and yourself.
Its roots in religious ceremony make lacrosse unique among all other sports.
It's said that the game was given to us by the Creator for His enjoyment, to watch us play, to keep us healthy and strong, to keep you moving.
Syracuse University was one of only a handful of Northeastern colleges playing lacrosse when it fielded its first team back in 1916. In the years since, the sport has spread to 45 countries, including China, and the process is underway to make lacrosse a full Olympic sport.
Our vision is that we want lacrosse to be back in the Olympics again.
This rapid expansion, far beyond its original cradle, presents the sport with new opportunities and new challenges. The David B. Falk College of Sport and Human Dynamics presents America's First Sport.
This came from a live tree. This is, to me, alive. It's not like a piece of plastic or a chunk of metal. The energy in this is transferred to the player who knows how to use it, and that energy continues.
The work that Alf Jacques does at the Onondaga Nation connects him to ancestors who were making sticks 1,000 years ago or more, but they didn't call the game lacrosse.
Each nation within the Haudenosaunee has a name for lacrosse. So at Onondaga, where I'm from, we call it Dehonchikwa Ace, and the literal translation is to bump hips. And really what that game is about is you play it hard, you play it tough, and you play with all of your effort, everything you have, all of your skills that you've been given from the Creator, but at the same time you play it with respect for your opponents and your teammates. So we talk about let's bring our minds together as one.
The earliest accounts of Europeans seeing the game in North America date from 1637. Jesuit missionaries in Canada thought the sticks looked like a bishop's crosier, so they called the game lacrosse.
What they saw was, first of all, a team, two major teams, which must have been impressive to them. Because whenever they saw, and the history of the Jesuits, with France and Europe and so forth, is when you saw two large groups of men on each side, that was war. Nations could play a game to settle a problem, settle something that, okay, let's play a game, winner takes all. And to settle it instead of having war.
Lacrosse is ceremony, and what I mean by that is that you would meet together and you would form rules together, but you would have feasts together in order to do that. And it's about the social relations between groups, between peoples, between families. And the early encounters with Jesuits missed that.
When we play lacrosse down here, for a medicine game. We believe that there's a game going on at the same time in the Creator's Land. So that's really part of how we play and connect with our ancestors when we play. So when we play, we truly are playing with our ancestors.
That person will keep that stick his whole life if he can, and he's buried with his stick. When you pass over to the other side, you take your stick with you, because you're going to be playing lacrosse in the afterlife.
The Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse, played the game across vast expanses, sometimes with hundreds of men at a time. There were 2 goals, marked by posts, but no boundaries.
The one universal rule is you can't touch the ball with your hand. But there are other rules. You just agree upon them before the game. And you do that through ceremony, through feasts, through meeting with each other. Well, this develops relations between nations, between families, between whoever you're competing with. So it goes beyond the game. It goes beyond the actual athletic pursuit of the game.
Well, that's not important as to who wins. What's important is that we played the game, because we're entertaining the Creator. So it doesn't matter, we're not playing to win, we're playing to play.
So you play hard, that's the instruction. You play fair, and the harder you play, the better the medicine. It really doesn't matter who wins.
The number one thing was to play with everything you got, because mainly you were there to play for the Creator's pleasing, and he wanted a good game, so you'd please him by playing with your heart out. And that also reinforces giving your heart out and everything else in life. So we just play as hard as we can, and just about getting out there, having fun playing the game.
In 1763, during the French and Indian War, a group of Hurons used the lacrosse game as a diversion to gain entry, then subdue a British fort in northern Michigan. But the sport wasn't designed to train for war.
It got tagged or labeled the little brother of war. But when you talk about lacrosse and to the Haudenosaunee and the Onondaga specifically, we don't talk about it about a replacement of war. It's more of a celebration of your skills and abilities. So that's really part of that misinterpretation that even continues today, and understanding the what can be the brutality of the game, but also the beauty of the game as well.
Lacrosse was played only by native men until the 1830s, when a series of exhibition matches was played for white audiences in Montreal. It kindled an interest that led to the establishment of the Montreal Lacrosse Club and several others in the ensuing decades. The goalie for the Montreal club, William George Beers, thought the game needed to be civilized.
When George Beers wrote the rules down for this game, First Nations players, Haudenosaunee, Mohawk, Iroquois players, were the stars of the game, and they dominated the game wherever they played. Their fitness level was higher, their skill was higher. I think George Beers wanted to even the playing field by putting in Rule 9, which said that the Haudenosaunee or Mohawk players were professionals and therefore couldn't play in this Victorian age of amateurism.
It was a race-based discrimination, but it was because Aboriginal players were so good at the game that non-natives felt that it was unfair that they would be competing in these games. And they deemed native players professionals. Now, native players at this time in Haudenosaunee communities are professionals, and they're openly professional. They're getting paid for their travel. But really, you start to see championship competitions come in, and non-native groups want to win these competitions.
What seems to be clear is there's these ongoing relationships, antagonisms that are between European Americans and native players, but it all takes place on the field. In some ways, you could see lacrosse as sort of negotiating or arbitrating those difficulties in a larger culture. After all, this is a time when native people are being stripped of their lands and their cultures, right? So that has to be kept in the background. So there are these antagonisms between settler people and indigenous people.
Dr. Beers, who went on to lead Quebec's first dental college, organized 3 trips to Great Britain beginning in 1867. Large crowds turned out to see a team of Mohawks and Caughnawagas led by Big John Baptiste play a squad of Canadian club players. The trip in 1876 included a ceremony and game at Windsor Castle for Queen Victoria.
The trips that started in 1867 over to England were huge for the future of the game. The Montreal Lacrosse Club was involved in all 3 of those trips, and the Kahnawake Mohawk were involved in all 3 of those trips.
When it becomes a kind of gentrified Ivy League field phenomenon, right? Then native players were excluded from the game. They weren't allowed to play. And this is a big sore spot. So what they did, native people, they were going to continue to play the game, regardless of whether they were allowed to play with white people or not. So they developed their own leagues, and they went into the box. Box lacrosse is really associated with Canadians and with native people.
John Flannery played for the Montreal Shamrocks Club until he took a job with Standard Oil in Boston. He started lacrosse club teams there and then in New York. He's called the father of modern US lacrosse because in 1879, he founded the US National Amateur Lacrosse Association. Its makeup, 11 colleges and club teams. New York Central Park was the setting for the first intercollegiate lacrosse game in American history. NYU defeated Manhattan College 2-0 in the fall of 1877. Only 7 schools had teams when the Intercollegiate Lacrosse Association was formed in 1885. It wasn't long before Johns Hopkins University was dominating the championships.
Here at Hopkins, it's a little bit different. It really is ingrained in the fabric of the institution. It's something that is important not just to the current student body and to the lacrosse alums. It's something that's important to the community, to the administration, to the faculty, you know, and we like to believe it's something that's important nationally.
Syracuse University fielded its first team in 1916 and won its first national championship in 1920. 1 year later, a football quarterback arrived from Chicago. His name was Roy Simmons.
When he came here from Chicago, he was a baseball player too, and he was going to go out for baseball. He's walking across the campus. He saw a couple of kids throwing the ball around, and the kids that were playing catch explained it to him. It's a game, you know, contact, the ball, you ran, you hit, and that appealed to him. And he said, well, I play baseball, but we get rained out or it's too cold or whatever, and you wait your turn to go to bat, but this would appeal to me, you know. You can hit, you can run. So he went out for lacrosse, never having played. And the original coach was here. His name was Laurie Cox. And my dad played for him, became an All-American by the time he was a senior. Laurie Cox loved him also. He was picked up by football as the assistant, and Laurie Cox picked him up as the assistant lacrosse coach. And he continued that career for 40 years.
Roy Simmons Jr. played for his dad and alongside one of the greatest athletes in American history, Jim Brown. Brown played lacrosse in high school on Long Island and came to Syracuse in 1953 on a lacrosse scholarship.
And he had great speed, you know, and he could hit. He ran at you. What are you going to do? And I figured out later on in life, Jim Brown knocked me down more than anybody else. He was a force for this game. You know, he was very unique. He's kind of like Jordan in basketball, you know. He's like all by himself, you know. He was unique. And he was almost unstoppable. He could score at will.
I think our average goals against that year was 2. It was a tough defense to come through. You had to come through, and then you had to deal with me at the end of it.
Jim Brown visited the Onondaga Nation to play a pickup game and got quite a surprise.
Full speed, 235 pounds of Jimmy Brown running downstream as fast as he could go. And I'm standing there. I'm the only one standing there. I was in the middle of the field. So he has to go by me. So he come running, because I only come up to the middle of his chest. I weighed 155 pounds. He ran by me, supposedly, and I bumped him, and down he went. He's in the game 30 seconds, and he's laying on the ground. The first time he'd ever been there in a lacrosse game.
With Jim Brown, Roy Simmons Jr., and Orrin Lyons in goal, Syracuse was the undefeated national champion in 1957. Players all used wooden sticks into the 1970s. They were a direct connection to the natives' medicine game that had been played for centuries.
Well, the stick's alive. It comes from a live piece of wood, and it's handcrafted by someone's hand, care, and love to design and build that stick. So when there's that much amount of care that's taken to build and create a wooden stick, it's already alive when it touches your hands. I've slept with I don't know how many lacrosse sticks in my lifetime, just because I want to make sure they're cared for, they're protected, and that they're part of me. It's as part of me as it is my hand and my arm.
This is my last stick that I played with. And this stick, I understand that you interviewed Al Jock. This stick is made by his father. One of the last sticks that he made. I've had this stick since 1941. And I played with it the last year I played. So it's important to me to do this. And the ribbons that I have on this stick represent the elders. So that when I play with the elders.
The synthetic sticks introduced in the 70s were lighter, more durable, and they changed the game.
The stick was a godsend. When it came along, it comes out of a mold. It's a version of fiberglass. It's a plastic. The handle is aluminum, or a more expensive handle. It's stronger. It's made out of Kevlar and titanium. Titanium goes to the moon. Kevlar goes on the policeman's vest. It's light. They weigh less than half a pound. They very rarely break. If they do, you pick up another one that came out of the same machine, the same mold. You feel good about it.
Syracuse lacrosse became virtually unbeatable again in the late 1980s with the arrival of twins from Western Canada, Paul and Gary Gate. They led the Orange to 3 consecutive national championships.
Well, I think you start with leadership, and Roy Simmons Jr. putting it together. He developed the chemistry amongst the team. We did as players and athletes. We really got along real well. And besides that, just a real drive. I think, we wanted to be successful. We wanted to win. And we did what it took.
And the two of them play together. They're unbelievable because they know where one another are. They know the style. They did some things that have never been done in lacrosse. Hidden ball tricks, shots, and backhanded shots, underhand. And we wound up in the playoffs. It was down at Rutgers again, and we lost. We lost by a goal or two, and the two boys said to me, walking off the field, this was in 1987, "We're sorry, Coach, if we let you down." I said, "Well, it's a team sport." Well, we didn't realize how important this was. This is not our country, but this is a national game. This is a national championship. And one of them looked at me and said, "Coach, we got 3 more years. You'll never lose another national championship." And by God, that's what happened.
In the minds of many, the 1989 Syracuse victory over Johns Hopkins to win the NCAA title was a turning point for lacrosse.
I was a part of something what I think was pretty special, with 2 teams, 2 groups of players, and that was the 1989 national championship game that had Johns Hopkins against Syracuse University. It was played in front of what was then the largest crowd at a championship venue. It was played at Byrd Stadium. It kind of pitted North versus South. What was deemed an undisciplined, high-flying, exciting brand of lacrosse in Syracuse, and the more disciplined, traditional, fundamentally sound lacrosse of Johns Hopkins. It had Canada versus America with the Gates and Tom Marachek against the American players. It had everything, and when you talk to people, they point to that game. And now, this is folks that are a little older now, but they point to that game and say, "I watched that game. That's the game that really hooked me on the sport of lacrosse.
The Syracuse teams of 88, 89, and 90, the three, they won the 3 national championships. They were a team that I think pulled lacrosse from just that regional thing into a national thing because of Gary and Paul Gate, because of the style they played with, the flash. And I think from that, I think lacrosse took a quantum leap there. To me, that was a golden age of lacrosse that because of Dave Petramala and the Gary Gate matchup, huge crowd at championship weekend, I think that season, that 89 season, elevated lacrosse to a new platform.
Following the 1989 championship, Coach Simmons took his team to Lockerbie, Scotland, where the previous year, the crash of a sabotaged jetliner killed 270 people, including 35 Syracuse students returning home from a semester abroad.
I wanted it to be all-encompassing. I wanted to go to the site of the crash. I wanted to meet the people in Lockerbie. I wanted to go to Lockerbie Academy there, and I wanted to put on a demonstration with my team. So all these little kids came out and they watched us play, and we made a big deal out of them, and gave them sticks and gloves and balls and jerseys and stuff. And then I wanted this trip to be memorable for them and for us, I brought a wooden stick. I did, put the garland around the wooden stick, put it at the wall of remembrance there in Scotland, not far from the crash. It was there for years.
The opportunity we had to bring a sport and try and heal the people of Lockerbie who also lost, some lives over there and some people, and it just was an amazing experience. It was, it's something that helps you become the person you are. You learn how to deal with, life and death, and how to deal with consoling people, and really great opportunity to learn how to give back.
Syracuse has won 11 NCAA men's lacrosse championships on the field, the most recent in 2009.
Other teams seem to be trying to slow the game down, slow the tempo down, where we're a team that likes to play fast, and I think we're one of the most visible teams. We're a team that everybody likes to watch. I know the NCAAs like us in the playoffs because of the style that we play, and I think we play a style that the players like to play and fans like to watch. So then when they come to Syracuse, they're going to get a chance to play lacrosse.
The 2009 champions were rewarded with a trip to the White House. The positive image of college lacrosse was shaken in 2006 by allegations against Duke team members who were later exonerated. And then the 2010 murder of a University of Virginia women's player by a member of the men's team.
The Duke situation, that created a stereotype, whether fair or not fair. That created a stereotype that was validated by George Hughley at the University of Virginia when we learned about his lifestyle and the heinous acts that he committed. So that is very much an issue right now in Division I college lacrosse, is cleaning up our act and getting the right representation of the student athlete out there. These kids are achievers in the classroom, they're good people, and they go on to do great things in life, and we have to focus on those success stories.
The image of a sport populated primarily by affluent white players is what colleges are trying to change.
10 years ago, the sport was more private school oriented, and I think now that it's a lot more public schools that are playing, especially in these newer areas, and you're getting a lot more diversity in the sport from different kids playing it, and I think that that's important. So I think that that's definitely changing. It's just diversifying the sport more. The more kids that are coming from different areas, the better. The more it expands, the more diverse it's going to get, and I think that we're definitely on the right path there right now.
When people thought of lacrosse, they thought of prep school kids. But I think with the way the game is spreading, I think that is going to change and is changing now. People are getting more into lacrosse, exposure to lacrosse, areas that typically wouldn't be exposed. So I think it's an ever-changing. I think the game is just making leaps and bounds, and it continues to progress.
The diversity of natives in college is changing. You definitely have more high schools that have high native populations in them that are being competitive, and therefore scouts are looking at those teams. I think eventually that whole idea and concept of native lacrosse players playing in college is going to shift and change probably in the next 5 or so years. I think Syracuse University is playing a big part in that by creating the Haudenosaunee Promise Scholarship, which creates a feeling within Native communities now that a college education isn't necessarily financially out of the realm of possibility. So you have 7th, 8th, 9th graders coming into high school now saying, well, I can play lacrosse, and I think I can play at that level, but if I go to SU, I might get a free education, which is going to drive their academics.
Two-year junior colleges are serving as a bridge to improve access to college lacrosse for many diverse young players. At Onondaga Community College in Syracuse, it's a formula for success. Their men's and women's lacrosse teams have twice won national junior college championships in the same year.
Our student athletes will come here for a variety of reasons. Many of them have had experiences in high school where maybe they haven't done it as well academically, and so they need a little bit more support that they can get here. Many times financially, the institution offers an opportunity for students that have financial challenges. Also, the availability of and access to outstanding academic programs here that will offer a bridge to a four-year school. They're excellent here.
My dreams are to go to SU, but like the Canadian curriculum, I had to come here first before I went there, so I'm on the 2+2 program. But I really like it here though. It's a good place to be.
Better to, start somewhere that's not, throwing you right into a big mix. Like, it's kind of a small school, so the transition was pretty easy.
The kids come here because they get an opportunity to play on a bigger level, get their grades up, mature as students, as well as getting some exposure. Like the kid from Hawaii, Lincoln Lissamore, he's going Division I. He's going to sign with Furman. But out of high school, people don't realize they even have lacrosse in Hawaii. So this was an opportunity for him to come here and get exposed to obviously more talent in lacrosse, but also be put on a stage a little bit and get that opportunity to get looked at. So I think, with our success and the way our kids can move on to four-year schools, people want to be part of that.
Because of racial disparities, we'll say, between Native communities and non-Native communities, they're not able to attain the same kind of academic credibility to make it into these elite schools all the time. So that's something that we on the academic side are trying to work to improve the chances of potential Native players in their territories, improve the education of these young Native players. If you look at OCC's team, they're just blowing everybody out of the water, and that's largely because the coach has been very aggressive in trying to attract Native players to OCC.
When the Syracuse University women's lacrosse team played for the NCAA title in 2012, it was their first trip to the championship game. But the NCAA didn't have a Division I women's lacrosse tournament until 2001.
Coming into high school, no one really was going anywhere for lacrosse, little D3 schools or anything, but and now, my coach has produced so many college athletes. We have one at UVA, one at Ohio State, one going to the first program at Michigan. I know we have other players, and my sister's at Wagner, who played there too. So we have girls going to D1 level who probably never thought they would ever go. They were probably going for soccer or basketball.
I guess we're lucky on the women's lacrosse side that along with that high school growth and youth growth, we have the growth in the college level. Athletes that could play any sport playing the women's lacrosse, and I think that's a natural progression. When it's a fun game to play, people want to play it, and I think through the equipment changes, through the rules changes, it's become a fun game that young girls grow up and want to play.
In the Native culture, women were discouraged from playing.
I didn't play lacrosse until I was in high school because everybody always said it's a men's game, you're gonna get hurt. But my grandma, she's a faith keeper in Silver Springs Longhouse, and she supports me, and she's just so proud of me even being here too.
Even in my house, I'm not allowed to touch the wooden sticks. like I can't touch them, I can't go near them or anything. But plastic and the more modern game, obviously I'm there. But I feel like even though I am a woman playing lacrosse, that I still, part of me still does believe in the tradition. Like I would never touch a men's stick, and I would never, even think of participating in, with the men in the men's game, or anything like that. So there is a little bit of tradition still held, connected to me, even though I'm kind of like going against it a little bit at the same time.
Organized women's lacrosse was born in Scotland in 1890 at St. Leonard's School. The headmistress had traveled to Montreal in 1884, where they saw a game between the Montreal club and a Caughnawaga team. Louise Lumsden called it a wonderful game, beautiful and graceful. Girls at St. Leonard's started playing in 1890. Rosabelle Sinclair was a St. Leonard's graduate who came to the U.S. in 1922 as a physical education teacher at the Bryn Mawr School in Baltimore, a private girls' prep school. She became athletic director and in 1926 organized the first women's lacrosse team in this country. Today in the U.S., there are 120,000 high school-age girls and another 14,000 college women playing lacrosse. It wasn't long ago that high school lacrosse was a rarity.
I know when I played here in I graduated in '62. It was a kind of a statewide league. We played in Watertown, we played in Rochester, we played in Geneva. Lafayette had a team. I mean, we played all over the place to get games. Baldwinsville had a team. There's only a few of them, but each year as it went along, they started to build up their varsity teams. Other schools started taking it up.
Now, at least 100 high school programs each year are adding lacrosse to their athletic programs. West Genesee High School in Camillus, New York, has won more state titles in lacrosse than any other team in the nation.
Lacrosse is just a fast-paced game. The ball's always moving, you're always attacking the cage, shooting goals. It's just a lot of fun to be a part of, and being a part of a team that, especially West Genesee, that's got a rich history, and it's definitely very cool to be a part of.
I owe almost everything, just from the start, even that in first grade, Coach Masser, Kevin and Tom Donahue set up that Shove Park program. They had us playing every summer, and they're just, constantly telling us the basics and, the textbook way to do things. And they really run their program on discipline. And I think that helped me extremely as a player and even all throughout college.
Like all our kids, just about all of them, go on and play at the next level at college. And then they go on and they coach, and when their little kid gets involved, they coach them. So they all get involved in it. And I think even at other schools, they feel like there's a payback that they have to do later. So the game is really spreading by almost each coach as you send your kids out and they get out of college and then they have their children, they spread the seeds and everything just keeps on going. They end up starting whole programs in areas where there was nothing.
The growth of the sport and the growth of the sport at the grassroots level, and that really, really got our attention. And it started in the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic states, but now it's proliferated. And when I have friends of mine who live in Florida, who live in Texas, and I'm talking to them, and they're talking about their kids playing lacrosse, that tells you the growth of the sport. And so it's grown so much from a participatory standpoint that when we saw that, and we saw college as the best opportunity for us, because obviously you associate the passion of college, your team, root for your team, and the history of particular lacrosse programs, and that's when we made the decision. We want this to be a staple of our springtime programming, particularly on ESPNU.
Passionate fans are now following teams in 2 professional lacrosse leagues, in person and on television. The National Lacrosse League, which traces its roots back to 1987, has 9 teams playing indoor box lacrosse. Some, like the Buffalo Bandits, average more than 15,000 fans for every home game.
They come for the party atmosphere. I think what sets the Bandits apart from all the other teams in the league is when you come to our game, you're coming to watch lacrosse, but also in the stands, it's a party. You're here to have a good time. It's the atmosphere, it's our announcer, it's the music playing, it's everything that's going on, not just on the field.
it's exciting, very exciting.
Our fans range all over the place. I think we have basically a young audience, but we also have guys that are been here 22 years, as long as the band's been around.
In this city, we have such a great following. You can't help but be excited and ecstatic about when you walk on that field and you have 18,000 people cheering for you.
Major League Lacrosse started play in 2001. The league has 8 teams playing field lacrosse in the summertime.
We have ambitious expansion plans to get to 16 teams in the next decade of time, because there is, even though it's a small niche sport, it is growing. It's the only team sport that's growing in the U.S. So we think there's very high hopes for professional lacrosse.
Both professional leagues have instituted shot clocks to speed up the action. A few pros play in both indoor and outdoor leagues.
As far as skill-wise, it is different. Obviously, you can just look at the goalie. The goalie looks different from an indoor to an outdoor, completely. Completely padded, no pads at all. 6x6, 4x4. So there are differences within the game. Playing indoor, I keep the stick in my left hand 95% of the time. Outdoor, ambidextrous, I go both ways. And that has to do with the angles and the small quarters within the box lacrosse. Where field lacrosse, there's a lot more room. And plus you have defensemen with 6-foot poles that can reach you a little bit more. So it's different, but as far as the same concepts of having a good stick and being able to shoot and the good fundamentals of catching and throwing, those are the same, but the games are different.
Professional salaries aren't high enough to support players yet, so most have day jobs and travel to games on weekends.
Teach math, language, and phys ed.
Right now I work at Brown Brothers Harriman. We are a private bank right downtown Boston, so financial services.
I own a landscaping company.
They work 9 to 5. They come here and play on the weekend, and they're playing in front of 15,000 screaming fans, but they go to work on Monday and no one knows who they are.
And that story takes time to build. But once we get the critical mass of fans coming to the game, then there's better TV. Then there's more sponsor dollars. Then it's a full-time living for the players instead of a part-time job.
It's critical to have both pro leagues. It's critical to have something to aspire to from a player's perspective and even from a parent's perspective of, if my kid's playing the sport, if he can aspire beyond college, I think that provides some motivation for kids, whether it's realistic or not. It provides a motivation to maybe pick that sport over another one.
Lacrosse has spread from its cradle in central New York and eastern Canada to 45 nations, including China.
Our excitement is seeing our game being played in more and more countries every day. And I think some of our board members, most of us have been around for a while. We've been through the positives and the negatives. I can tell you, when we go to our meetings, a lot of the other countries, the new countries, they've got young people involved, and they're just getting the passion for lacrosse, and honestly exhilarates me. You just see it's just pure passion.
We played against the Czech Republic, and the fans there are amazing. They're right there and sitting right in the stands away from you, chanting and singing, drinking beer. It was just amazing. Having the fans so passionate, having the players so willing to learn, to get better, and having people who are exposed to lacrosse there asking tons of questions. It's one of those experiences that again, I'll never forget.
International lacrosse is the only sport that has recognized the Haudenosaunee, which includes the Iroquois Nationals men's team, as a nation, equal in status to all others.
Lacrosse is Iroquois, lacrosse is Haudenosaunee. That's, the Creator give it to them. And we're very lucky that they share that gift with us and celebrate with us. And I think the Federation of International Lacrosse, I think the Canadian Lacrosse Association do recognize that history, that culture, and what they've given the game. And they do have official recognition, just like any other nation. So the Haudenosaunee Nation is no different than Canada, U.S.
When you think of the scale of a nation, and to have somebody come and say, we want you to represent our nation, because that's what you're really doing, is you're representing them, that's got to be the highest honor. And to look at, to be able to go to other reservations and say,
have somebody say, hey, I remember when you did this for the Iroquois Nationals. I remember when we did this as a nation. That's very special, and that stands out.
The sovereignty issue for Iroquois Nationals, which really comes from the Haudenosaunee, is key to who we are. We do have treaties with the Dutch, the English, the French, the USA, and so part of that whole process of identification of who we are comes from the sovereign status of our treaties. And so that's really the core to the creation of Iroquois Nationals. And so they're kind of intertwined together. So to be able to say that we can compete internationally and to be able to say we're sovereign have to go hand in hand.
One of the most amazing upsets in the history of the sport occurred at the 2012 Lacrosse Under-19 World Championships in Finland. The Iroquois Nationals defeated the USA in round-robin play. Over 160,000 teenage boys play lacrosse in the U.S., yet the Iroquois team drew from a pool of less than 300.
If you really look at it, I mean, you think of all the big upsets in the history of sports, what bigger upset than that? A small little population of community compared to the United States of America and beating them, it's crazy. Thinking about that is just crazy.
Beating the USA was it felt like we represented our community very well once we defeated them, and it felt great because it was the first time in history that the U.S. has been defeated by the Iroquois.
To see the Iroquois Nationals progress better at field lacrosse, so it's a good statement to see what's to come with our younger guys coming up and see how they do, and hopefully they'll do just as good or better than we have.
I don't think the Iroquois will really mind about that. 3, 2, 1, and there is the final whistle. The Iroquois Nationals have just created history.
For Native people, this is a way that they can celebrate who they are, right? This becomes an issue of their identity. There's a deep commitment there. For non-Native people, you can't think of another example where the spiritual values of a game are that front and center. So for non-Native people, they're very intrigued by this whole dimension of the game.
With the Iroquois Nationals' reintroduction into international competition, it's solving a historical injustice that Aboriginal people were barred from their own game in championship competition. And now you have them re-entering this as a sovereign nation. Now, not only does this play an important aspect of lacrosse, you're having the originators back in the game and reintroduced to international championship competition. But it's also an important message about Haudenosaunee sovereignty, world indigenous peoples' sovereignty as indigenous nations. It's a political statement. It's an important political statement that they're making.
International lacrosse will come to the Onondaga Nation in 2015 when it co-hosts the World Indoor Championships along with the First Niagara Center in Buffalo. The Sahunun Yendakwa Arena, built in 2001, is where each new generation is learning the sport of their ancestors.
It's in our cosmology. It's fundamental to our life, I would say. So it's a foundation. You'll see the young fathers with their sons, and you'll see the grandfathers with their grandsons, and you'll see that exchange going on all the time.
The Olympic Games are the next frontier for the sport of lacrosse.
Our athletes are among the top in the world. I'd love to have our athletes have the chance to participate in the biggest sporting event in the world. And I think it will help us in our development. Most countries tend to give a lot more time and funding to Olympic sports. So I think as we move forward to try to get every country in the world playing lacrosse, I think that would be a huge help financially.
Lacrosse was played as an official sport in the 1904 and 1908 games. Canadian teams won both gold medals, but only the US, Canada, and Great Britain were competing, so lacrosse was dropped from the Olympics. It returned as a demonstration sport in 1928 and at Los Angeles in 1932. The Johns Hopkins Blue Jays won a collegiate playoff for the right to represent the US at the LA Coliseum. and they won 2 out of 3 games against Canada. Now that 45 nations are playing, the process is underway to return lacrosse to the Olympics by 2024 or 2028.
Our next big step is to get into the International World Games. And then really after that, the next step for us is, once we're in the World Games, is to apply to the IOC to become a member of the IOC. And once we're a member, then we can start petitioning to actually become an Olympic sport.
Every country is going to be watching the Olympics, and they're going to see this game of lacrosse and realize how exciting the game is. And you got to have the respect for how hard it is to play this game and the amount of time these athletes put in. And I think if we could get the opportunity to do that for the Olympics, I think it would just be huge for the game of lacrosse, and everyone that is watching and has the opportunity to play it.
I think it would be incredible. We have the World Cup for men's and women that is every 4 years, but having the Olympics to be part of that too would be just another way to grow the game. And how many people watch the Olympics? It's worldwide and everyone is involved in it. So I think having it broadcasted throughout the world would just bring so much more awareness to the sport.
I got goosebumps just thinking about it. I watch the Olympics all the time. You just watching those young athletes, and I guess old athletes as well, walking out there, and you're like a little kid. And for me, watching them and to think that our sport could be there, and maybe possibly your son playing there, words can't describe it. It would be an unbelievable feeling.
I look at the potential of the Olympics down the road. I think that combined with a turn in the economy. If we can ever get a strong economy going again like we've had in the past, it's poised in a position to explode.
The rapid growth of lacrosse in the U.S. and worldwide has brought with it some difficult challenges.
It's growing faster than there are coaches to coach it. So I think if you're someone that had seen lacrosse or played lacrosse, that's a bonus for some areas, because they don't even have coaches that are familiar with the sport and teach the fundamentals. So I think we need to get more coaches out there somehow, some way, and it's going to be better for the players to learn the fundamentals and to learn how to play the game.
There are still some barriers to entry with cost of equipment, etc., and we need to get more sticks in kids' hands. And when we can do that, the game's just going to keep growing.
As lacrosse expands far beyond its cradle in central New York and eastern Canada, the connection to its ancient sacred origins is often forgotten.
I think the connection between the past and the present and where our sport has come from, the creators game, the Native Americans, and today, I think unless you're around, in an area that has a strong Native American presence, I think it's lost on young people today. But I think the past in general is often lost. That's disappointing. I think part of that problem is us as coaches. We don't preach that on a daily basis because we're not around that influence. But I don't think that that influence is felt and understood nearly as much as it could and probably should be.
Well, I think the challenge of dramatic growth in a sport is the potential to lose what's best about sport. And lacrosse is a traditionally amateur sport, as we said. It's rooted in Native American religion. It's a very special game. And we don't want to lose that positive culture as the game continues to grow and becomes perhaps a little bit more focused on financial gain and other types of influences.
What I see, in the international field is this reverence that those teams have for the Indian side of it. No, and I don't think so. I think if anything, they observe that stronger than the American players. They recognize that root and they appreciate that root, and that's part of the reason for playing.
Bridges cultures together, non-native and native. It's an Aboriginal element that serves as a gateway for us all to connect.
More and more today, both sides are interested in trying to use lacrosse in its original sense of being a medicine game. That is, to heal that history. The game itself can be a means by which people will come to understand and appreciate one another.
The spirit of the original medicine game is alive in projects like Metro Lacrosse in Boston, where corporate donations are putting free sticks into thousands of hands that otherwise would have been idle.
What's so great about Metro Lacrosse is we're changing that kind of idea and that kind of thought that it's just for white suburban cities, but instead we're bringing it into the Hispanics, the blacks. We have a lot of Haitians in Boston. So we're getting the sport to them, and we're helping them out, and we're giving it to inner city kids, which is cool. So I enjoy growing the sport and giving it kids that normally wouldn't get an opportunity to play lacrosse, get the chance to play lacrosse.
I can relate a lot to these kids because I actually grew up in the inner city, and so what I see is a mirror image of myself growing up, meaning these kids have a sense of confidence. They build a sense of confidence. They feel like they're part of something big, like being on a team, and they develop positive relationships with their peers and adults who care. A lot of these kids that come from the inner city, they're missing a parent, a brother or sister is incarcerated, or they have no parents at all. So essentially Metro Lacrosse becomes like a first home for these kids.
The Lacrosse for Development project of Right to Play is reconnecting Native youngsters in the U.S. and Canada with the game of their ancestors.
Our goal is to put a lacrosse stick back in the hands of the First Nations people that would have had it had it not been left behind, forgotten, however that come about. But we want to go back, reestablish the roots in First Nations territories across the Americas. We started last year working with a group called Right to Play. We went to 40 First Nations communities, give out 700 sticks, and we're going to be continuing that this year and as the years go on.
When you're born as a Native American, you're given a small wooden lacrosse stick as a tradition. It's just a sign of like, never let the game go, never let your faith or your experiences die out.
The people of the Longhouse have shared the Creator's gift with the world. A gift to be enjoyed, to keep its players active, healthy, and strong. America's first sport continues to be a gift, treasured for its power to bring people together.
It takes you everywhere. It can take you anywhere you want to go, anywhere. Spiritually, literally, figuratively, anywhere. It takes you any place that you want to go, ever. Anywhere. It takes you to the moon, takes you, across the world to play, all of these places. It takes you to different people. All of the opportunities, are endless with lacrosse.
This is where it all came from. And it's not going to be forgotten. They take this wooden stick and they teach their kids where the game came from. Which, hey, that's great stuff, You can't forget. Don't let them forget.
And this, of course, is the ball. This is the medicine. That's what it's all about.